What's up YouTube? Dale here from Zephyr War Games, and we're here with Charlie, and of course, as you can see, he's already got the brand new cards. Not just normal, Starlight, because Mac Daddy. I don't even want to know the rest of the deck. I'm going to let him show it. This is all post CYAC. It does incredibly well, and it is incredibly shiny. So, Charlie, with that, take it away with your main, extra, and side.
Let's go main first. So, start things off, the usual. We're still on 2 Albaz. There's an argument for 3, I just can't fit it. So here we are. Got the 3 Alubas. This ratio hasn't really changed. 1 Tragedy, 1 Adlib. Still the same before and after. I think anything more than that is a bit excessive. I know there's some people on the Allure builds on like 2 Tragedy and whatnot, but you don't need it. We're on 2 Cartesia. Painful. But now, because of Lulu Lilith and because of all the Nadir Servant lines and all that stuff, 2 is more important than before. Like before you could get away with 1, now it's a little less clear cut, so I'm on 2 for the time being. And the new girl, guiding Quem. So, Quem is like the missing link for a lot of the pieces in this deck. On summon, sends anything that name drops Fallen Valbaz from deck to grave. If you send from extra deck to graveyard, you get to summon anything that name drops Fallen Valbaz from your grave. That includes the fusions. And on top of that, it being a light spellcaster comes up for things like the new Sanctifier fusion. It comes up for, weirdly enough, Lulu Lilith sometimes, if you've got a lot of things. You can search this off of Lost, off of Mercuria. It comes up, and it's just really, really good. It gets you through a lot of pieces. Also, because it's treated as a Despia, it comes off of opening as well, which is very funny. Libellion Saronir, standard. Still on these. You still need them. 1 Albion, 1 very shiny Mercuria. Trust me, I have a legal copy upon us. But still this, I would run 2 of this if I had the space. But keeping this to 40 cards is a blessing and also a curse. And so we had to make some cuts, and this is the one I chose. I think because of Lulu, you can probably get away with less of this. This only comes up if you open exactly Gold Sark and you need to search the second off of Lost. But I'm fine making that concession for the time being. And we're still on Dragoon. Got a very shiny Dark Magician now. Love this rarity, but yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going to be good next format, so I like having the option against backrow deck specifically. Disruption, 3 Ash, standard. 3 Droll. I'm quite scared of Super Heavy. I think it's going to be pretty strong, and this is one of the few solid counters to it. Plus, it's decent against everything else right now, so it's kind of a middle ground. These might change. I'm not entirely set on the Disruption dots, but I mean, it's 6 slots, I can swap them out easily, and I've got decent side options. Spells, 3 Banded Fusion, standard. 3 Banded Opening, also standard. And by now, should be standard, but 3 Fusion Deployment. All of these really, really good. This is like the second best card in your deck almost. Having Cartesia Access gives you extension past Ash on Banded Fusion and all other stuff. And speaking of extension, the new kid on the block, the Nadir Servant. So the idea with this card is, let's say you ban a fusion, you get ashed, oh no, turns over, but you have this. So what you do is you take this, you send Lulu Lilith from extra deck, you add Fallen Albaz, and then end phase, Lulu summons Cartesia from your deck, Cartesia fuses with Albaz, get Albion, and you make Mirror Jade from there. The reason people like this a lot, I think, is because it's just much, much better than Crossout, because this works even if you do get your combo off. Because you can grab Quem with this, you grab Albaz with this still. You can still just send random extra day monsters to the graveyard, that comes up. So even if it's like, it's extension, but it's also, you can just add on to your combo board as well. You can just like grab Quem for something next turn. So it's just good, I think. I don't know if 3 is correct in the main. I think that might be a little bit too much, but I wanted to try it out, so we're here. Some one-offs, Lost, Red, and Branded in White. This one's a little bit 50-50. I'm trying out builds without Expulsion at the moment. I don't think it's going to live a ban list, so this was one of the things I placed in. It does come up, and banishing from the graveyard is a big deal, so we'll see. I think it's good enough, but that might change. Foolish and Gold Sark, got to run the consistency cards. They're standard. And then the traps, the Retribution is standard. The Blazing Branded King is the other replacement. So this is functionally like Void Ogre. It says on activation you choose a branded, an Albaz fusion, and then you negate the effects of all other face-up cards on the field. And that means it's, if they evenly, you can chain this and it negates the evenly, and it still keeps the one you choose active. So if you choose Mirror Jade, you still have the Mirror Jade banish. But because it negates all of your other stuff, you've got to play it right. Like, you have to end on boards that are like Albaz, Gugnoll, Branded in Red set with Adlib Engrave, which is what I've been doing a lot, because you send it off with the Gugnoll instead of the Puppet. I think if Expulsion lives, it's just better than this. But if it doesn't, I think it's worth looking into. That's the main deck. We're still on exactly 40. I don't know how, but we're here. I just refuse to take it over 40 if I can help it. Extra deck, 2 Mirror Jade. Equally painful, but we got to run the 2 of it. Only the 1 Lubellion now. I cut it down. I think 1 is enough, even though I'm 2 Mirror Jade, but you summon this off of Albaz more than you do off of Bandit Fusion nowadays. 1 Lubellion it'll get you across the table. Depends if cash is super painful or not, but I'm not expecting Diablosis to live either, so ratios are a bit freer this time around. 2 Albion, 1 shiny one. Still got to run 2. 2 is like the minimum you can get away with. Some 1 Obs, 1 Albalenatus, 1 Titaniclad. This is exactly an Arias Heart out. I'm not sure if this is staying, but also just as a big body, it's pretty decent. You can summon this into a lot of boards and it just contests them for free. Especially if you can't really get away with going for like Lubellion off of Bandit Fusion, something like that. So it's a nice one to have. Might change, but we shall see. The 1 Rinbum, these lines are still nuts, so if you can get them. It's a lot less effective with only the 1 Mercurio, I think, but again, stuff like Banded in White, some banishing Mercurio and Albaz for this comes up, and get the Cartesia, go from there. You do go into it a decent amount. Still on the Masquerade and the Quiritis. Quiritis, just as a Gugnoll target first, and as a general board contester second. I've seen people cutting Masquerade, I do not agree. I think a lot of the time ending on a board plus this is such an irritating thing to deal with, because you can't just combo off for free, you have to deal with this first, and weirdly enough it's harder than people think. Especially just trying to having to use negates through everything else, and you've still got Mirror Jade and things. They want to use negates on the actual interruptions, but then they have to play under this, and it's stressful. It makes people do things they wouldn't normally, and you get a lot of advantage from it. It's the mind games. We're on the 1 Sanctifier, so people say this is Expulsion 2.0, and I disagree. I think it's a decent card in its own right, but not as just summon Puppet from Graveyard. I think you play it as a value engine more than anything else. Mostly because the lines that get to this lock you out of Gugnoll in the same turn, and 90% of the time, unless you have the absolute tits. So realistically, what you're going to be doing is, I tend to make this a lot in the opponent's turn. Again, a lot of the Lulu lines, if you have Nadir Servant, for example, and you do the same thing where you send Lulu, add Albaz, summon Cartesia in the end phase, you can then Cartesia with Albaz into this if you've already got everything else. And you can get a little bit more advantage that way, because you can get Quem, get the Albaz back, this get a Luba back or something. Again, they'll stop evenly, that kind of stuff, but it's a weird card. I'm not sure we've found exactly what to do with it yet, but I'm messing around with it. I think it's good enough to see inclusion. It's just debating on whether it's good enough for the space, because space is very, very tight. Only the 1 Gugnoll. I can't really afford to run 2. I don't have the space for it. But card's not so. Got to run at least 1. The 1 Dragoon, yes, he's shiny. The 1 Chimera, still got to run this. Banded and Red setups are more common now, weirdly enough. You get a lot of end boards where, because you don't have Expulsion, you end up going for regular Mirror Jade, Gugnoll, send Adlib, set Branded in Red. And that contests a lot of boards that would break it. It contests the Dark Ruler and the Evenly and all the common ones. So you still need 1. And then only the 1 Lulu, the only non-max rarity. I've yet to find one, but I'm working on it. But there's an argument for 2 of these, mostly because you want 1 to send, 1 to summon. I don't see it. I think if you're sending it, you're well past the point where you're summoning it. I think 1 is enough. If you've got the space, great. I just don't think I do. That's all the extra. The side, we're covering a lot of things on the side deck, so there are some that might work, some that won't, some that might change. 3 Santa is the main one for a start. Probably the best Kaiju at the moment. Gets over Testudo, gets over Ibli, just deals with purely. Solid choice. Would recommend. The usual suspects. Cards Nutso. Cards Nutso. You run both of them. We still run Cyclones. Grave of the Super Ancient Organism is a card, and if you do not respect it, you will instantly lose. So you have to run these, and if you suspect a deck can play it, you have to side them in. Every time. You just cannot afford to get hit with that and have no answers. You just can't. And then the final 3 are some Bestials. 2 Magnamu, 1 Druisworm. We haven't seen a lot of Mathmech recently, but I'm expecting people to start messing about with it, especially with the new cyber stuff coming out. So this is like a preemptive measure, because Mathmech is borderline unplayable when you have a Bestial in hand, because you just Bestial the diameter and they lose on the spot. So that's the whole deck. That's all we got.
Cool, so that's main, extra and sides. Obviously the format right now as it currently stands is a little bit up in the air. We've got new cards coming in, we haven't had a ban list for the old cards yet, so we're still kind of juggling up a Super Heavy Samurai format with a Pearly format, with a Cash Tier format, a Sprite format and a Branded format. So there are a couple of cards that may change or may not change. This just gives you an introduction into what the deck could possibly look like. You've now seen more of a reason why people are playing the Dear Servant. I feel that that definitely helps out the deck now with the new involvement of Quem and Lulu Walith. So it's definitely something to look into. Any other shout outs from yourself, Charlie?
Just the Exiles, or doing my testing there. Shout out to D20. And shout out to everyone here as well.
Don't forget the pit game.
Yeah, actual storming would help.
So thank you so much for that. As absolutely always, guys, if you want to see like a combo video coming off the back of Branded as well, so you know a little bit more about it, then make sure you smash that like button, get it above 50 likes. In the first 24 hours, we'll unlock that for you. With all of that out of the way, as absolutely always, stay safe and of course, happy dueling.